Welcome to Civics in a Year, the podcast that makes civic literacy fast, accessible, and surprisingly engaging. In just 10 minutes an episode, we'll tackle one of 250 essential questions about American democracy, how it works, why it matters, and what it means for you. Whether you're a student, a teacher, or just someone who wants to better understand your country and your rights, you're in the right place. Civics in a Year is powered by the Civic Literacy Curriculum from the Center for American Civics and is produced in partnership with the School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership at Arizona State University.
Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited to have our very first member of Congress on the podcast. We have Representative Kimberlyn King Hines with us. She is the delegate from the Northern Mariana Islands. And today we're talking about territories. So, Delegate King Hines, you serve as a representative for the Northern Mariana Islands. So that's one of the U.S.'s territories that has a vote in Congress, but not necessarily vote on the House floor. How does that shape the way you advocate for your constituents? And what do you wish more people understood about the role of territorial delegates?
So I think, right, that because we don't have, as delegates or representatives of the territories, we don't have the ability to vote on the floor. But we do have a lot of power to be able to shape policy through our work in committees. And that's actually where the real grind happens. You know, a lot of the work is about showing and building the relationship, right? And I liken the role of any representative, not just the delegates here in Congress, is an advocate, right? An advocate for your district. And if you look at the process by which any bill is passed, everything goes through the committee, right? And so you have the ability to make amendments, you have the ability to introduce legislation, you have the ability to do just about anything any other member does, and then bring it out to market before they put it out to the vote for to the floor for a full vote. And so I don't think that is very. It's a lot different than other members here have in terms of the role. But the one challenge that we have, I think, as folks who come from the territories, and I think Puerto Rico is far more advanced, and the Virgin Island is far more advanced in terms of, folks knowing where those areas are and what those challenges are, right? But when you're coming from the Northern Mariana Islands, the biggest challenge basically is, folks understanding basic geography, or knowing how to pronounce the Marianas. I mean, the first couple of months here as a member was correcting people in terms of, we're not the Mariana Islands. We're not the Mariana Islands. We're the Mariana Islands. And so you have folks who are representatives of these different districts who have never heard of the Mariana Islands. And so my job is to not just to advocate, but to educate people about who we are, how the relationship was first established between the United States and the Marianas, and how and the role that we play in the larger American conversation.
Yeah. And that's honestly, this is why I chose you to be our first member of Congress, because I think you're right. There are a lot of people who know where Puerto Rico is, know where the U.S. Virgin Islands are, but do not know where the Northern Mariana Islands are. And I think that it's an incredibly important conversation. So the Northern Mariana Islands have such a unique relationship with the federal government and such a distinctive culture and community. What are some of the big issues or opportunities you're focused on right now? And what do you think the rest of the country could learn from the island's experience?
So that's a very interesting question with the conversations that are happening here now in Washington, D.C. with regards to, for example, what everybody's talking about with regards to President Trump's one big beautiful bill and these tax breaks to millionaires, and how we're giving breaks to these millionaires while we're not funding all these different types of programs. The Marianas right now is going through an economic crisis. And, this shutdown has shown the vulnerability of our economy being so heavily reliant on the federal government. So when you cut off food nutritional assistance program, you're not just cutting off that assistance to folks. You are literally cutting off a pipeline that is feeding these small businesses that are keeping government afloat. And so it's a multiplier effect. My focus is to try to build long-term sustainability with regards to the economy. And that means that, we have to focus on a policy that revolves around economic growth. And when you're talking about economic growth in such a remote area, right, transportation is going to be an issue. Just because you've got to fly in, you know what I mean? This is not a situation where you can just drive through, right? So, transportation an issue and labor is an issue. And so those, have been the two long-standing challenges to be able to build our economy. And so that's the focus for me.
What do you want? Because again, we're talking about an island, very remote. What do you want people who are listening to know about the people, the culture, and the community of the Northern Mariana Islands?
We are very family focused. We have a culture called Inakamolic. And if you were to break down that word, Ina means to look for, to search, or to shed light on. And Pamolik is to take care of, or to look for good, right? So those two words together is to look for good in bad situations all the time. It's to look out for one another all the time. And so it's the culture that underlies every single person who lives in the Marianas, whether you are indigenous to the islands or whether, you are now an implant, because that's just the way of life when you're living in a remote area that is far from everywhere else. You have to look out for one another and take care of one another. And so a lot of these philosophical conversations that are being had in the mainland, right, those are not our issues. We are very incredibly diverse. We look out for one another, and I think it is what has gotten us through many challenging times, to include, biggest, America's strongest typhoon passing through, or, the pandemic and being safe from the pandemic despite not having the resources, or now this economic challenge.
And listeners, I do want to kind of center us here. So we are currently recording this on November 5th. So there is a government shutdown still. So can I ask one more question about how the shutdown is affecting the people of the island? Because when you talk about people on the mainland, like, the issues are different. How do federal shutdowns affect the people of the island? Because it's going to be different than somebody like me in the state of Arizona on the mainland.
So we do have a few federal employees that are impacted, but most of the employees that are out there are considered critical, because these are folks who are working, at TSA or CDP, right? And so they're working without pay. They're going to be impacted. But when you have a situation that's happening right where now government programs to include the nutritional assistance program that the CNMI is, received a recipient of, when you have that, funding stream get cut off at a time when the economy is incredibly depressed and collapsing, you're not only taking away food from people's table, you're taking out $4.2 million from circulating in the economy, and you're now impacting small businesses who generate revenue for the government to continue to operate. And so it's this cascading impact, right? That is the impact that this shutdown is having now in the CNMI. And, and the job basically is to continue to advocate and to elevate these issues to folks that the circumstances that is happening out here is very different when you don't have another pipeline.
And you are the only delegate in the House of Representatives and you called it CNMI, which is the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you are the one delegate in Congress as a whole or just in the House?
Congress as a whole. So we don't have any representation in the Senate. It's just in the House.
Okay. Thank you. Delegate King Hines, thank you so much for shedding light. Again, I'm sure that there are going to be listeners who are now looking at their phones wondering where the Northern Mariana Islands is, which I think is such a great thing. Thank you for taking time with us to help us understand what it is like to be a territory, to be a remote island territory, and what your role in Congress is for your constituents. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime. My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Civics in a Year. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who cares about a constitutional republic as much as you do. For more episodes, resources, and updates, follow us on social media or visit us at civics.asu.edu. Make sure to check out the show notes for any relevant links. Special thanks to the United States Marine Band for their performance of the Stars and Stripes Forever. Let's keep building a stronger constitutional republic, one episode at a time.